Bob, did you want to say a few words too? I'd like to introduce another man who's worked for the industry since 1979. He's seen every part of the industry. He's worked for several gas companies, even offshore drilling. He's a master driller. He's the man who's responsible on the drill rig for the activities that are occurring on that drill rig at any one time. And I'd like to introduce Robert Lee McCaslin.
Thanks for that announcement, and I like that last name. These people that are sharing these stories, it's real. It's real, okay? And like you said, I started out in the industry in '79, and I watched Pennsylvania come through. Well, Colorado was just so much gas, we didn't have enough to pipe it through. So I kept sending these hands to Pennsylvania. There's a lot of hands that came from Colorado. And then when it slowed down in Colorado, and then you had a split tail, North Dakota, Pennsylvania. So I kind of feel the responsibility here, you know, of this action that's being taken place, since it's a long road that we've been traveling. And I guess that's when Mac actually I had a revelation up there in Prattsburgh when a young man came and he shared a story. And I went there because this young man really touched the heart of Pennsylvania. And I see him here tonight, and that's very honorable, very respected. And I learned a lot from him. Been out of the industry for 3 years now, but it still don't go away, you know. And where we draw the line from Pennsylvania to New York, you know, you can't. Them are our neighbors, you know. These guys are my family. I've spent most of my time out there with the men, the crew, you know. That was my job, to watch over them. You know, my responsibility to keep them safe, make sure they went home at night, you know, back to their families. And now it's actually turned about. You know, and the next generation that don't know about what's ready to hit, it's our responsibility to set that roadmap. You know, they're going to talk about casing. And, you know, casing is a very thin wall. It's a very thin wall. And the more you use it, the thinner it gets. It's like a car on, you know, on salt roads. So the salt roads, the more you use it, the more it's going to wear out. So our footprint's already here. It's time to take the responsibility to those people. Let them lead us out of this. You know, turn the card. You know, you got to just keep continuing to say no. You know, that's about what I got to share right now, because these guys really touched home. Thanks.
One of the things I heard tonight I've never heard before, and it was over dinner, and I would bet that most of the people in the audience are in the same boat. I learned that now they have the technology and are actually using it to drill down 1,500 feet, 2,000 feet or more, and then go laterally up to 7 miles, and in some cases even further than that. I was telling Mac, who told me that my best information up to this point in time was that the max they could go is 3 miles, and they very infrequently went 3 miles because they didn't get the productivity and it was very expensive to go that far. But he says, Jack, you're behind the curve. That was a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago. They now have the capability to go that far. So. You think of this drilling that potentially would come into this area. Is there anybody in the room that has the technology to tell where that well bore goes in terms of where your property is located, 7 miles away from a well? I think those are the kinds of things that we need to think of. The other thing I wanted to bring up, Mac and I had a conversation about Randy going into these trucks, and we had a film the other night. Unfortunately, it didn't make it here tonight, but it was an industry film that was showing a workman going into one of these tanks and doing exactly what Mac had talked about, scraping down the sides of these tanks. And for those of you who've studied this issue, you know that in the wellbore, over time, you get radioactive scaling on that pipe, on that wellbore. And eventually, even though they use acids and other things to remove it, they pull that wellbore out and ship it off to a hazardous waste facility. Well, you can imagine the same thing happening in a residual waste tank that's filled with this water, this flowback water that's coming up. And over time, it too builds a scale. So this man was sent in without really any protective gear. They did have a thin paper hazmat suit that he was in, but what's it called? Tyvek suit, but no respirator. And they put a rope around his waist, the function of which is to pull him out if he succumbs to the fumes. So the industry film we saw last night was exactly that. They had so much arrogance to actually put that in a training film, and you see the man going into this opening with no protective gear on, as if that's the way it's done. So I just wanted to add that note.